Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of What's in the Box. We are Tatsoft. I'm Harry McCullum, and I'm joined today as usual, by our founder and CTO, Mr. Mark Taccolini. How are we doing today, Mark?
I'm great, Harry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just kind of going into today's topic. Before we do that, it's a kind of an exciting time right now. We're kind of prepping for our 9.2 release, and we're just getting a ton of activity, a ton of interest in all the, kind of the new features, as well as how that combines with everything we've already done with frameworks and FactoryStudio. And we're looking forward to our kind of live stream intro to 9.2 and release in early October. And we're going to do our live stream presentation on October 7th. So look for that. And any comments on 9.2, Mark? I know we're right in the middle of it.
Wow. We have great features on data connections, asset modeling, distributed applications. So, in fact, today I decided to talk about how to deploy hot standby applications. In fact, as a preparation, because we can manage some pretty large applications now with lots of distributed data. And when you start doing that, it becomes to be important to have an easy way to deploy hot standby scenarios or
Yes.
to have redundancy in some places. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's why I decided to go back and show a feature that's available right now in both versions, 8.1 and 8.2, on how to do those redundancy applications.
Yeah, that sounds great and appropriate, as you said. The data with the importance. I think that our main theme of 9.2 is connectivity,
Yes.
and as all the storing of the data and more mission critical applications, redundancy, hot swap, all that becomes more and more important. And as you said, it's always you guys. We built that in from almost day
Yeah,
one.
from the
So
beginning. Mhm.
yeah. So without any further ado, if you want to kind of hop in, and then
Yeah,
eventually we'll show some configuration and everything. So that's great.
yeah, let's do that. Let me share my screen. And today I'm going to share my full desktop. So you see here in the bottom, I'm running this Mac computer. And the reason is I want to be able to very easily show two Windows computers here. So we have those two virtual machines, this one VS and this one tests that we're going to use. So I decided to start, instead of showing some applications using that, I decided to show the process from the very beginning. So you can see how we can do that very easily and without having to do any previous configuration. It's really very easy to set up that kind of scenario. So what I'm going to do, that's our project selection tool. I'm going to create a project from scratch called Demo 1. And one thing very important on product families, we have this express mode that does not need a license to the demo. But to use the hot standby and the redundancy features, that will not work. It cannot be the demo project. You need to go to have the license system. So I'm going to create an enterprise project, not the express. And one thing we have now here that's quite nice, on 9.2, we're adding many templates. So one of the templates, it has already some displays to manage the redundancy status of the computers. So I'm going to create, it seems demo 1 is already in use. So let's create my demo 5 and to show how you can build that from the beginning. Some templates that I'm going to show, some displays, they are new with 9.2, but all the features, everything that I'm showing on the product itself, they are features already available since the 8.1. So when you create a new project, if you have the license, we have this folder here that you can use to set up your primary and your backup server. By default, we use the concept of hot standby. And in our documentation for 9.1, we have this item that explains that in detail, redundancy and service configuration. I'll just show to you that's there, but I'm not going to use that. I'll really just explain how we do. So you can pick up any projects and very easily to set up to be a hot standby server. You just need to get the computer name or the IP. In this case, I'll just double check the IP of those computers that I'm using. It's this one here. So I'll make this virtual machine to be one of the computers in the pair. So it's 2011 557. And I do remember my other machine is the same one with 4. So what I'm doing here, I'm saying that these projects will have a primary server and a backup server. Again, here you can put a domain name. And those two computers, they will automatically synchronize the data. You don't need to do any project configuration on top of that, okay? In fact, you just need to make some decisions. For instance, if I'm running on the main computer and I'm running a backup computer and the primary computer goes up, I want to switch back to that computer that was my primary, or I want to keep running in whatever computer is running and the other computer goes in standby modes. If the two computers are pretty much the same, you should use that option. If your primary computer is more powerful, you should put this option. So when the primary computer is up and running, he will be always the leading computer. Or you can use that. So that concept of primary and secondary, it's not really important in this case. What's important is the concept that I explain more detail. Which of those two computers is active and which one is standby. And explaining a little bit some concepts, assuming perhaps you're not that familiar with those names. When we put those systems in place, we have always two computers, the primary and the secondary. One of those two computers will be at one time the active computer. In the hot standby configuration used by default, only one computer, the active, is really doing the data collection, process the scripts. The other computer that standby is only receiving the information, the online information in real time. So if the computer's active goes down, the other one starts immediately showing the data. And the client's computer connected with that pair, you will switch automatically from one server to another one. Depending on the network, you may have 1, 2, up to perhaps 5 seconds that the display. If you have some data changing too fast, you may note the connection, but the clients, they will stay connected and they'll be switching automatically from one server to another one. Okay, so the only configuration you need to do is this one. And let's talk about the replication of the story. So far, so good, Harry. Let's talk a little bit about this other configuration. Okay.
Yeah, very straightforward.
We also have the ability to replicate automatically the alarm historian and the tag historian database. Okay. Here, I need to explain. Typically, there are two typical architectures people like to use when do projects. So let's go here to our drawing tools to just, I should have probably some nice drawing with that, but it's okay. Let's go here and pick up some icons from our own library. So let's see what I'm going to do. Now, do you know, I think I'm going to do something very simple. I'll just pick up this to act as a computer, and I'll pick up this to act as a PLC, and I will pick up just that with a nice, better color to act as a database. Okay. Probably it's better if we switch those two colors. Yeah, it's like better. But anyway, one scenario that people like to do redundancy is that each of the two servers, they have their own database. So essentially, you have a SQL database here, a SQL database here. The connection with the PLCs, you may have two networks, or you may have only both servers connecting with the data acquisition, and one of those two servers goes down, the other one is activates. So let me pick up another object. So I'm also using the opportunity to show a little bit of our drawing tools. So in this case, I'm selecting this red color, but I'll play the alpha to make that some opaque, so I can put in top of one of them. So essentially, when this computer goes down, this one is active. When it goes down, the other one is. And when both computers they are running, there is one computer that you call the active computer. So the active computer is the one that will be at all times doing the math, getting the acquisition, and the other one is only having the data synchronization. Okay. In this scenario, let's say both computers, they have their own SQL databases. So in this scenario, this computer has, let's assume that's a SQL server archiving the data, and this other computer has another SQL server. So we also need to synchronize the data in those two databases, because if this computer is down, okay, when it goes up, all the data logging here not be available in the other one unless you do a synchronization. And we do have that synchronization also built in. You can define if you're going to do automatically the synchronization for the alarm historian, the tag historian, or both. Okay. If you enable that, you have that out of the box. Another scenario you can use for a hot standby or redundancy application that's very common, you put your database in another computer, and that other computer can be a database cluster or use some other sort of backup to the database. So in this other scenario, those two computers, they act as a mirror, but whichever computer that is active will publish data to the remote storage archive. Okay. If this computer goes down, the one that is the secondary, it becomes the active, and it's starting publishing data to the external archive. But only one of them is publishing data, and we do that switch automatically. This other drawing I did is also very common for when you have an external storing applications. Any comments here, Harry?
No. Again, that's I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so let's keep the drawing like that, okay? And let's go back to our application to put that application to run. So the only configuration really you have to do is to say, okay, who will be my primary and my backup? And the application needs that information. So when I start running, I'm going to look if my pair is already running. When I start this application, I cannot start writing data to the controllers, write to databases. I need to know who is the pair. So when I start, I go after that other computer to see who is active, if I should be active, exchanging data, or I should enter as a standby, only starting to do the data synchronization, but with no actions, okay? And before we deploy that application, let's create some tags. Let's put some data here. Otherwise, we'll have really nothing to synchronize, okay? So I'm going to create here a few tags in this application. And here on my drawing tool, I will do something that will be very visible, that I'll pick up this object here and change colors. So I will apply here a few color to change based on my tag I just created. I will switch between two colors, and also I will have here an action to toggle the value of that tag when I click here in the object. So, and I'll put some of those here. And these objects here, I just will remap to use other tag, but instead to go to each and all animation that I'm using, I'm just going to use this replace tag methods to replace from integer one to the other tags I want to be using in each object. So that will be 4. And I'll do a quick preview of this page to see if it's working as expected. Yes, so far so good. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, because I want to show a hot standby scenario, I want to run this application to computers, okay? We do have ways to synchronize the project configuration from one computer to another one automatically, okay? And I'm going to show that later. But for now, it's my niche deployments. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pick up these projects in FactoryStudio projects. Where are projects? Okay. FactoryStudio. Oh, here it is. Come on, where? Oh, here it is. Projects. Okay. I'll pick up that project configuration, the demo 5 projects, and I will go to my other virtual machine and bring that project to this other virtual machine. It's there. So as you see, it's very easy to
because it's one file.
It's only one file, everything there. That file is an encrypted SQL database. So so let's put those projects to run now. When I could do just run project direct, but I'll open the projects because I want to give additional explanation on the configuration. when you're going to put the project to run, you can run, just go to run startup and click that icon. Or it's very common that want to define a batch. So the application starts, everything the computer starts, or even set up the application to run as a Windows service. We allow that. When you are going to create either batch files or Windows service, in that configuration window, here we have the command line you need to apply. So instead of starting the projects manually, by that way, that's not only for redundancy projects. You can start any projects. The only difference when it's a hot standby and you're starting from a command line or through a Windows service, that need to say here to start that as a hot standby pair, and who are the two computers that are working as a pair. The same way, on the client side, you need to define to the client who are the two computers the clients can go for its data. Okay. When I'm starting the project by, or let me put blue. Okay. So let me have those two colors. So the gray is the computer test, so I don't get confused anymore. And blue is the computer VS. Okay. When you start the project through the user interface, you don't need to worry with that, because those settings, as you can see here in the command line, they are automatically applied by the configuration tool. But if you start the project through a command line or set up in a Windows service, you need to put those settings in your configuration. Okay. So let's go to the other computer to put the other computer also to run. Okay. And of course, it would be very nice if you have some sort of diagnostic tool to see what's happening, what's not happening. And we do have those diagnostic tools called Property Watch, Tracewind, and Modern Information. They have all kinds of advanced properties to show if they are exchanging data, if they are not. But instead of using them today, when I create a new project, I hope you remember, I select a template with a page already built in to show that information.
Nice.
So let me show again, in case you didn't know. When I create a new project on the beginning, when I select this template, redundancy info, we had already that screen built in the application. And with the basic typical information you want to show about your server. What is this basic information? Here I'm showing the main modules of the software, which one are running, which one are not running. I'm showing if there is any objects pending to synchronize. And I'm showing here, yes, redundancy is enabled. The computer W10VS with this computer here is the active. The primary server is running, and the secondary server, the backup server, is in standby. What means that standby? It means here this computer is running, but it's in pause. It's not really, it's only the UI, of course, is working, but the math script is the data acquisition is the other computer that is taking care. But other than that, of course, as you can see, we have the synchronization of the data. Whatever happens in this UI propagates, because those two applications, they are working as a pair now, okay? And let's start to do some additional changes with that, so you can see what how much control you have on that. One thing I could do, I could stop this VM, okay? But instead of that, I'll show one thing more interesting. We have this option to switch to standby server. What that means? Right now, I have two computers running the application. The VS, this one here, is the active, and this one tests is not the active. You see, you go to this one computer, it say I am in standby. Who is acting as the primary is this other machine. So what I'm going to do now is force the system to switch to the other computer to be your active. What does happen when you do that? I'll put here the confirmation. When we force a switch, you see the system is putting in pause the process. It's not stopping. He just puts the process in pause. He switches the computer and then starts again. So the way, and you see now who is the master of the two applications now is the computer test. Okay. Yep. So how we do process a switch when both applications are running? The computer that's you send back the switch to the other computer. Okay. This computer that is the master, if I force a switch, he just put the logic, the data collection in pause, make sure this other computer has all the synchronization, and puts the other computer to run. Puts the math scripts, the OPC back to run, having this computer as a master. And you can set up the time for that, and depends on how large the project. But typically that switch will take from 1 second to 5 seconds. That's more or less the time. You can do better if you have a very, very good network between the computers and have very good computers. It may be a little bit more if you have lots of data to synchronize before doing the switch. If you are running lots of communication drivers, you may need to synchronize some data. So you cannot say precisely the time, depends on the application and the network infrastructure, but it's quite fast and reliable.
Okay.
Of course,
Mark, we had a question pop up, maybe just, I think it's right in line here. So I don't know if you can see it in the
not really. If you can,
okay, so basically the question from Hezron is, so the standby computer, does it constantly update its own database by checking on the running system so that in the event it has to take over operation, it's already up to date with the events?
The answer is yes, but the process is not exactly like you described it. So this computer here that's acting in this drawing as the standby computer. So in this example, that's the active, that's a standby. The information here is being updated all times. So to answer his question is yes, but it's not the standby computer keeps querying the server. The active computer automatically, wrong drawing. I wanted this one here. The server computer automatically sends the data all times to the standby computer by exception. So the computer that's active, it sends the synchronization to the standby. As the data changes here, we send only by exception the data for the standby computer. And the only thing the standby computer is doing when he is backup, he's receiving that message to synchronize the memory, so he's ready to start immediately. And also, he also is running a watchdog timer. So if the server, the active, stop sending this live data, or even there is no new data, he always have I am alive message, that's when the standby computer will pick up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about that switch and online configuration. So the process, as you see, it's very simple. And because I use the templates, I have already the information with the status, which server is active, which server is in backup. And I believe these templates even has some other trend charts and some other additional information on the server status. And here it has also information about the performance, CPU, clock. So all that information is part of the templates, and also use the new feature of 9.1. That's those dashboard pages.
Yep.
Okay. But anyway, let's start making that more interesting. Okay. You'll see, when I want to give that additional explanation to reply his question, I start using our own drawing tool. So I did draw some additional things here. But if I go to the user interface, the displays, the operator are looking, we don't have yet that. Why that? We do have online configuration, and we do have, I explain what called hot start. But in this case, the additional drawing IDs wasn't here yet because I was doing that on the computer that was the backup computer, the standby computer. So the user interface now is running, connecting with the pair. So those drawings that I did, hold on, let me put the two computers side by sides because I got confused with them. And if I did, I can manage you did also. Okay. So when I was doing some additional drawings here in this computer, that's the standby computer. So of course, those modifications, they were not published yet because I was changing the computer's action as a standby. How should be the procedure to make changes when you have a hot standby pair? How I update the projects? One way is to do what I did. You do the projects on the computer that is the standby. You go to the primary computer and you stop the primary computer, or you force a switch to the other one. Okay. And then you can also migrate the applications to the other computer. Because keep in mind, you have the project configuration, but the two project configurations, they should be the same in the two computers. To avoid that, all that copying, we create two features that are nice. One of them is update project on the standby. It means instead of doing the project configuration in the standby, I do the project configuration on the primary, and I ask the system to automatically replicate the standby. That's one feature. Or another one that's here in our documentation, we have a setting called project Pathe. So when you define that projects, we automatically will update the projects from the pair or when we do a hot start command. What that means. If I use that setting when starting the application in this computer here, every time this computer is starting, every time this computer has a new boot, or every time I do the command hot start, we'll search for the latest version of the project in that path you defined. So when you have two computers, you don't need to manually copy, do the configuration one file, copy to another one. You can use that configuration so both computers will search from the latest configuration in a file server, or one computer will search from the latest from the other ones. There are many ways that you can use that configuration, but pretty much you can either do a command to replicate the configuration, or you can ask the system when it's starting to go to that file and get the configuration. Okay, those are the two ways that you can define that. So let me stop sharing the screen before I start to go deeper on the client sides, to make sure there is no more questions so far on that, from the audience or from you, Harry. Let's talk about the client or both servers. We are okay for now.
Yeah, I think we're good for now. How about in the scenario where you had the remote or the kind of the database server, and the primary was logging to the database server?
Yes.
What happens if that database server were to go down?
When the database that you are using, you are not using our own storage. Let's say you have an external database. That's the scenario you're talking.
Yeah.
You have like a storage product sitting on another remote computer.
Yes.
So we have our two hot standby computers, both connected with that remote archive. What does happen in this case? When you have the hot standby scenario, only one of them is publishing the data. Even both servers are running. The standby is not even keeping the connection with that remote server alive. So you don't need the licenses. When this server goes down, I have a power failure or I order the switch, this one establish the connection with the same remote storing tool or with the same remote SQL and start from the other one, stop it.
Okay.
Because every time I'm synchronizing alarms, tag, audit trail information to an external SQL, my standby computer receives the information on what I was able to synchronize or not. That information is also go through replication to the standby server. So when the standby becomes the active, he just keeps setting data to the remote archives from where the primary had stopped. Okay. But through an independent connection. Okay. And another comment that's important to do when you do that scenario that we have a remote storage, that remote storage has its own redundancy or has its own backup procedures. But it's very common to have a hot standby tax software frameworks sending data to Azure. But in this case, both servers, they have only one connection with Azure. One or another one is sending, but the same cloud repository.
And now if that connection went away or that remote data server went down, then our primary automatically takes over with like a store and forward?
Yes, if you enable that feature.
Okay.
By the way.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have also that nice story for procedure that also works in hot standby scenarios, by the way.
Yeah.
You just have to enable that feature. Good.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit more. One question that probably someone. Have one true question before I go to my own questions. Yeah, the standby only receive updates by exception. Yes, true. Unless, of course, the standby computer is starting fresh. If the computer was powered down, the standby computer was physically off, and you power on that computer, in the startup procedure, he receive all the objects, and he can even receive updates of the project configuration itself. Okay. But after that, the standby computer receive only updates by exception. That's the question we had, and you are right. And someone may ask, at least they do, what you do if you don't want a hot standby scenario? You want a hot scenario, or you want to have a scenario, have 3, 4, 6 computers acting in a hot scenario. Okay, I see by your smile, you may have a project like that right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. In this case, we are doing everything automatically, but you can set up 2 TouchSoft servers or 3 or 4 to do that similar process, but through configuration. Okay. Let me not the complete training, but only a little heads up how you do that.
Yep.
We have in our device channels a tool that's called FactoryStudio to FactoryStudio. This protocol driver is a high-speed, by exception, TCP/IP protocol that you can synchronize data from one FactoryStudio node to another one. Okay. So in fact, when you have the primary computer and the backup computer running in this automated configuration, we have this protocol driver, not exactly driver, but a modified version of it running behind the scenes to do the synchronization. So you can manually replicate the full. By the way, I was talking, but I was not sharing my screen. Yeah. So let me show exactly which protocol I was referring to. Okay. Here on Add Devices, we have this FactoryStudio to FactoryStudio protocol that it's used to data synchronization by exception between servers. So using this driver, I can very easily synchronize a piece of the entire database with one or more FactoryStudio nodes. Okay. And the configuration is very simple, because if I want to pick up all those tags, including this tag that's a data structure, if I want to have that replication, including data structures, to a remote server, I just put on points the top hierarchy of the data structure I want to replicate, and the address on the remote computer. If it's the same tag name, I can even leave empty, because by default, we are going to assume that we have a similar tag in the other server. And you can make that configuration to be in one direction or make a bidirectional. So we do have this tool to synchronize the real-time data between the servers. And we also have very easy ways to start and stop the data acquisition, the alarms, whatever are your specification. For instance, if you have a scenario that you have 3 servers, but only one server should be running some scripts, you can do that very easily, as I'm doing. Put all the script engine in pause, or even one piece of code only you can put in pause. For the ones that are already familiar with our products, you remember that everything in our product, script, data communication is an object. So if I want to pick up one
Mark, is there any way to get to like a fuller screen mode?
You are going to have what?
Yeah, fuller screen. Basically, you were just in a smaller window.
Okay, good. Thank you. It's better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can pick up any communication driver, any code, anything that you want to stop and start according the stats of the many servers. You can enable and disable pieces and parts of the application. But when you have more than 2 servers, you need to work a little bit your specification. Because when you have 2 servers hosted by scenario, that's by definition, we know exactly how you should work. But when you have 3 servers, 4 servers, how you want to manage? Do you want the 4 servers to be getting data directly from the PLC or synchronized between themselves? Do you want all of them to have all scripting and all commands from the display open all times? Or you want to, in some scenarios, allow some servers to some actions? If the other server is running, you do like a balancing. You only allow those servers to do that processing. There is no really standard answer to that question. So
there's really there's no limitation on our side. It's really what's the specification? How do we need to implement this in your specific application?
And I really like to emphasize that, because from time to time, if the question, instead of 2 servers, can I have 3 or 4 servers work at redundancy? I say, yes, but how define the priority task switch? Are you going to replicate the data? And many times, and I got that requirement, they really didn't have think through
now they got to step through
on that arbitration, because you need to define some criteria there. Okay. And I see different scenarios, and there is no right or wrong. You must understand why you need that. If the server should pick up data direct from the controller, and that configuration can change dynamically. You can put a server that's in one point get data from the PLC, then it switches to get data from another server, then switch to another one. Those changes can happen in real time based on the stats of the network or based on some external watchdog controller that you have in your plants. Okay. But the key point, the configuration is flexible to allow all that kinds of all those scenarios. Okay.
All right.
Good. So let's share my screen again to go back to show the system configuration here. Okay. And so as you note, really the configuration, now that we have also this template to show the status, I start a project from scratch and it's already running a hot standby scenario. Okay. You need to have, just to finish that, just a little bit to understand on the client side. Because we do have 3 types of clients: rich clients, smart clients, and web clients. And how they will behave, and you have also the iPhone app. Okay. When we have a rich client, that's the client we install on the remote computer, or also with our iPhone app, they can switch automatically from one server to another one. You just start the iPhone app or the rich client with the 2 computers that will be acting as a pair. Okay. That's simple. Okay. When you have a smart client, it's the Microsoft click-ons or the Microsoft smart client technology, We also do the switch automatically, but it's just one thing that's a little more tricky. I will copy this to my notepad so I can put a very large font if someone is using, and I'll remove that connection timeout because we don't need that to this explanation. So let's take a look what's happening here. Okay, the font is big, but not that big because I want to have only one line. Okay. So what's happening when you start a smart client? When you start a smart client, you put HTTP. Even if it's a full client, full .NET client, we start like any web application. So we start the web from this server, and you let the application know if this server goes down, you switch automatically to this other one. So even with our smart clients that you don't need any installation on the client side, we can have the redundancy on the clients, okay? But what is the little catch here? What if the client computer is completely down and this computer is also down? This web request will fail. So there is one little trick that when you use smart clients that you don't need any installation on the Windows computer, you must let the user know or do some little batch to test which computer is alive, because you need to start your web page either in this way or this way. You see my point, Harry?
Yes. Yep.
Because when you put HTTP, it will go to this server to try to get the first load of the pages. After the first load is done, the server can go down with no problem because I just switched the other one. But when I am start the URL, the HTTP protocol, you need to use one or another one. Okay? Makes sense when you think about it. Okay? When you have pure HTML5 clients, either you also have to do the two URLs, or in some cases, there are some third-party software, in that case, it's not provided by us, that you can put here only one IP, and the system will route, you'll do a dynamic IP mapping to the proper server based on which one is active. Okay? There are networking tools for you to do that kind of configuration. Good. So that covers the client's the
We
client
had
side.
another question come in, Mark.
Okay, let's see. Which is the best scenario configuration that you probably reduce latency? A key question is if you really need to have the duplication of the story in each computer. If you can do your architecture to do the redundancy only for the real-time data and keep the alarms, the tag story in an external computer, in external server, that can be a cluster or not, but based in the SQL on the story package, that really helps on the performance and the latency, because the real-time data, by exception, does not take long to update. But when you're doing alarm logging, audit trail logging, all that archives, we need to run also a process to do the synchronization of that as well. So one way to do the configuration, of course, is to, if possible, to do the scenario that the alarm server and the tag story is another independent, and you do the hot standby only between the two servers for the real-time data and for the data acquisition. And another good practice on that is also do well when you're defining the data acquisition. Because we have lots of configuration tools to cycle, to read some data every 100 milliseconds, or only when that data is being used by a display, or every 10 seconds, or when trigger happens. If you have a large application And if you do a proper configuration, the data acquisition, that's really the bottleneck for the performance because the servers, you synchronize the data by exception. So the less data changes I have to synchronize, the better the performance, okay? And regarding the task switch between the servers, it's really an equation based on network performance and CPU power of the server. It's almost linear with those two, how quick can be the switch for the standby to take over. That's it. Any more questions? Good.
No, but yeah, my
Go ahead.
quick comment there too is, if anyone out there ever has an application and they're not sure, we definitely have people on call in our support group all the way up to Mark's level, that we can help you guys size the servers and any design side questions. That's absolutely something we can help out with. So
we do have lots of experience on that. I'd like to point out that in our website, we have an application case of the company Uzi Minas. Probably I could type that here on the chat window, or I can put that name visible there in some points. And we that application, we have more than 50,000 communication tags, and we have around 50 PLC stations. We have 3 or 4 database connections with different applications, and that application is running in a hot standby scenario since 2004. It means 6 years ago. One of the very first versions, it was our version 2014 that was used on that startup. So we had already 3 major releases after that very first release. And so, as Harry pointed out, from the very beginning, we had the architecture to hot standby scenario or remote data acquisition, remote data synchronization. So any architecture are little in doubt how to design the architecture, the servers and the databases. We do have lots of experience to help on that.
All right.
That's it. I think that's our time.
And no, that's great. That was great, Mark. I think that was good. Starts, showing off more at a technical level, kind of the power of the redundancy. I think that was awesome.
Especially with those new templates. You see, I didn't pick up any project. Just wait, start new, put it running. Data is running the synchronization of the 2 displays. It's there. And let's emphasize for 2 weeks from now, Harry, October 7th.
Yeah. 2 weeks from now is our release, basically. We're going to have a live stream on, basically showing off what's new. And the intro webinar or live stream is really, it'll be fairly high level, but we'll get into enough detail and show you some things that I think it'll be well worth everyone's time. And then look to follow up with that. We'll start to do some more detailed workshops, digging into some of the newer features and how they fit with your applications as we move here. So I think that's So look for the announcement October 7th, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Take care. Bye-bye now.